friends. In the Know Your Root series today, let us start with the Middle Paleolithic Age, that is 200,000 to 50,000 BCE. A major development that happened during this age is the domestication of fire. Now, man not only had a dependable source of warmth and light and a deadly weapon against prowling lions, he learned to cook. And with this, he had varied food choices, which led to a series of evolutionary changes that must have happened over a few thousands of years, where he ended up having smaller teeth, shorter intestines, and larger brains. Now, with the larger brain, he started thinking. This had both its positive and negative impacts. Now, today we crib about the burning Amazon forests, how Mother Earth is losing her lungs every day, and how, because of our greed, we are pushing so many animal species into extinction. Yuval Noah Harari, in his book Sapient, describes how this process has been happening for hundreds and thousands of years. Man learned to burn down thick, impenetrable jungles with fire. Now, these were replaced with grasslands that attracted a lot of game, so he had his food at his doorstep. Now, the positive impact of the rapid development in his thinking process was that by the year 40,000 BCE, man had started to create art. The discoveries from all around the globe, such as the Lion Man, an almost 12-inch high figurine made of ivory that was discovered in the Stadel caves in Germany, the beautiful cave paintings of Chanteau Arc in southern France, the large bifacial axes that were excavated at Nazdat, Qatar in Egypt, that were used by him to quarry quartz, and the Blombos caves in South Africa that had the cave paintings and symbols that he had created elaborately using red ochre dye. And most importantly, there were these boat-shaped beads found in African caves made from mammoth ivory, the mammoth being the big brother of our elephant. And quite a lot of manual processing had gone into preparing these beads, like probably soaking, boiling, grinding, polishing, and chiseling and whatnot. And not only out of ivory, there were also beads made from bones of animals and ostrich eggshells. These beads were probably used to create their personal ornaments. So much so that archaeologists ended up giving a name for this culture that was prevalent all around, the Aurignacian culture. Well, as far as the subcontinent of India is concerned, we are yet to make any interesting discoveries relating to this age, that is 40,000 BCE. Now, what is interesting here is that together with this rapid development of man's cognitive behavior, an important auxiliary development that should have happened parallelly is the development of language. The origin of language has never been considered as something requiring scholarly attention by eminent personalities in the multidisciplinary fields of archaeology, anthropology, sociology, linguistics, and even genetics. Why? The answers to many a question would have to be just reconstructive theories without any empirical evidence, because the issues and history related to the origin of language have to be found so many thousands of years before in prehistory, and they are simply not available. However, using statistical calculations to arrive at the time period that it would have taken for language to flourish in all its diversity as it does today all over the globe, it must have taken not less than 100,000 years. Now, this was established in the year 1998 by
Johanna Nichols,
a researcher from the University of California, Berkeley. This finding was substantiated further by Atkinson in the year 2011 from the University of Auckland, New Zealand, indeed establishing the time period of language to have started somewhere between 150,000 to 100,000 BCE. Now, if you see, this time period overlaps with our sapient history, where they started migrating out of Africa roughly around that time, occupying all the other places around the globe, and even landing in the Australian continent by around 45,000 BCE, an area that had hitherto remained untouched. This means he had to cross the open seas and must have created or built some sort of boat. This said and done, why would or what would have necessitated the evolution of language? Now, amidst the many notions, there are three which are of interest here. One is that with his rapidly developing cognitive knowledge, the sapient must have felt the urgent need to communicate his knowledge to those in his clan, reaching out to a larger number within a shorter period of time. Maybe he had to prepare them for this exodus out of Africa, and for this he needed a dependable communication tool, language. Secondly, as his cognitive intelligence developed, he needed to free his hands to do art or build boats, and he didn't want to use them all the time in sign language. So this had to be replaced by something, language. Now, the third most important and interesting theory is called the gossip theory. The man being a social animal, the need to communicate with his clan or group is something innate. Now imagine a group of cave women sitting around an African cave, working with their beads, creating ornaments. Now imagine them doing this in absolute silence. That's quite difficult to imagine. So the behavioral scientists call this vocal grooming, akin to the manual grooming that you see in apes. So this was an important social need that man needed to network and develop into groups and unite their efforts so that they could climb the food chain and become the fittest to survive in the shortest period of time. Now, having said this, over the last 50 years, biolinguistics is a fastly developing field where behavioral scientists have again taken up the research into the origin of language. Noam Chomsky, one of the founders of behavioral science, has a very interesting theory. This is called the discontinuity theory. About 100,000 years ago, a chance mutation must have occurred in the man's brain. It's almost like a component of language was installed right in the middle of the brain, and he was gifted with the ability to create language. As opposed to this, there is a continuity theory, which is more Darwinian in its approach, where behavioral scientists again claim that language should have developed gradually along with the improvement or development in man's cognitive behavior. This has its advocates as well, and many theories have been there since the time of Darwin. In 1861, Max Muller, the German philologist, proposed a few very interesting theories: the bow wow theory, the ding dong theory, and the poo poo theory. The bow wow theory, claiming that man constructed language by observing the shrieks and calls of animals and birds in the wild. The ding dong theory, claiming that man should have reconstructed language by observing the vibrational resonance of things occurring in nature. If I were to give an example, the conch shell, the sangal. Normally we have the practice of keeping it against the ear and we hear a sound. We call it the sound of the ocean. Some of it call it the primordial sound of Om even. So there is a resonance in nature, and from that man is supposed to have created language. Now, the poo poo theory. The first words that came out of emotional interjections and exclamations when man was prompted by the or the sensory perceptions of pain, pleasure, surprise, happiness, etc. Now, come to the Tamil language. Let's say a caveman is running fast and he trips over a stone and he falls down. From then till now, when we are hit by something and we are in pain, what is the first sound that comes out of the mouth? Ah! Then imagine the caveman wanting to woo a cave woman. He goes, ee. இப்போ கூட நம்ம தமிழில் வந்து சொல்லுவோம் சும்மா ஈனி இழிக்காத அப்படிம்போம். Imagine him wanting to reprimand somebody. Ay. And now an element of surprise. I. And now the man pretending to listen to the woman. Oh, oh. And then probably on a lighter note, today's wow was then ow. Now look at the long and short of it. Ah, ee, oo, I, o, ow. Woo again being for surprise. Ooh. So now here you have the entire gamut of the vowels of the Tamil language. We all know that Tamil language has 12 vowels and it has its 18 consonants, ik, and all. And then the compound letters of vowels and consonants together, numbering 216. And then the the எழுத்து 1. So totally Tamil has 247 letters. Now what are the vowels called? They are called uir, meaning life or soul. The consonants are called me, being udambu, and the compound letters as uirme. Well, which other language in the world could have named its vowels after the soul and its consonants after the body, and thereby creating a system of language that not only was very simple to evolve, but also very philosophic and scientific in its approach? Of course, we take great pride in our mother tongue, and many of us would also like to believe that ours was the oldest language on earth. But many people have had such notions, and though behavioral scientists, especially those rooting for the discontinuity theory, claim that there is some innate sense in man that develops language without much effort from the time he is a child, almost by default. Now, there were a few interesting experiments that were conducted with which we will be concluding this episode. Way back in 7th century BCE, a pharaoh by the name Herodotus conducted an experiment. This was to establish which was the first language on earth. He took 2 newborn children and gave it to a shepherd, asking him to rear them in absolute silence. Now, he was trying to find out if this innate theory were true, then they must start talking by themselves at some point of time. A few years passed, and one day, one of the 2 children cried out, "Because." Now, in parts of Turkey, there was this native language of Phrygian, and Bikos in Phrygian meant bread. So Herodotus declared that Phrygian was the oldest language in the universe. Now come to the medieval times, King James V of Scotland conducted the same experiment. And do you know what he declared? He declared that the child spoke Hebrew. Closer to home, the Mughal Emperor Akbar also conducted a similar experiment. And much to everyone's surprise, do you know what he concluded? The child never spoke at all. It was maintaining absolute silence. Well, who spoke the truth? We don't know. But more about our roots in the next episode. Vanakkam.